So, in the classical form of a republic, you have a virtuous set of citizens capable of self government through a shared set of beliefs, values, and customs. Okay, there's a reason that most of the time republics are birthed out of monarchies. So, the Romans had a monarchy that eventually turned into a republic, that eventually turned into an empire. And the United States was birthed out of a monarchy, the UK, the English monarchy. It became a republic, and now it's trending towards empire. If you're seeing a pattern here, there's a good reason, right? Even if you look at something like Athens, right? It becomes this republic. It wants to be an empire. These desires are constantly moving through these forms of government. Now, in order to be a republic, the citizens need to be virtuous because you have to have, again, this self control. Citizenship in a republic is precious, it's limited, and it conveys as many responsibilities as it does rights. The citizens of a republic don't gain the right to vote simply because they're like located somewhere inside the nation. They just happen to walk in and raise their hand and whatever. No, these people have earned the right to be a part of the society, to have their say in the republic because they are constantly engaged with a body politic. Classically, in most republics, citizens were the soldiers. Yes, literally, service guaranteed citizenship. If you wanted to be respected as a citizen, you had to be able to contribute to the fighting capacity of the republic. And you also had the responsibility of often being a family man or a business owner or a active member of your religious community. You had to prove that you were willing to sacrifice on behalf of society, and you had the ability to contribute to it meaningfully. There was none of this, I just show up and vote myself the money. Everybody recognized that if you allowed republic to go to that place, it would destroy itself. Every classic philosopher, every modern philosopher before the 1900s all knew that the minute the people had the ability to vote themselves money, that was basically the end of the process. So if you were going to have a society where people voted, where they had this popular sovereignty, only the people who were a net positive, who were contributing, who were going to lose something if you had the state start handing over money, they were the only people who were allowed to vote. That was what it was limited to. This is even true in the original American context, right? The vote is very narrow. It generally tends to be men of European descent, and most of which had to serve at some level in a militia. Not all of them, but a large number of them had involvement in, directly either combat or being ready to be pulled up if necessary to defend themselves in their community. They often served as the posse for the sheriff. You didn't usually have a police department. The men were involved if there was a sheriff or sometimes a constable, depending on the American tradition you're looking at. They often had to round up the men of the city because they were assumed they would be armed and ready to involve themselves in enforcing the law. So the idea is that constantly you had this desire and this requirement of men to be active in their community, to take their own well-being, the safety of the community into their own hands if they were going to be considered productive citizens. All right. So the reason that a republic is allowed to be self-governing is because, again, the people share a certain type of virtue. They all have an idea of what the good is. It's part of their folkway, it's part of their tradition, and the law is really just there to guide them along the tracks they already have laid down. So the law matters, but it's really more of an encouragement to stay on the track they've been going on as a society. It's not a radical reinvention. It's not a bunch of social engineering. It's kind of the way that they live. And this is why self-government is itself a kind of a misleading term, right? Because it conjures up this image of the autonomous individual, like this person who's just doing it on their own because they're so virtuous and they don't need anyone else. They don't need any contact society. They'd be the same as they were either way. But of course, that's not true. Aristotle told us that virtue is practiced in community, that as a political animal, man can only achieve his ends by being a part of a community in which he has specific roles and specific duties. So when we say there's self-government, what we really mean is it's community government. The community had enough social force and there's enough virtue in the individual to follow that social cue that the government rarely need to step in. The formal state rarely needs to step in and do anything on its own. From time to time, the civil magistrate might need to move things one way or another, but republics are self governing in the sense that the government has this light touch because the community is constantly self reinforcing. Like I said, everyone from Aristotle to Machiavelli to the American founders, they believed that republics had to contain virtuous populations who held themselves to account. A more powerful central ruler, it just isn't necessary because the people are already strong. They already share the sense of identity and morals, and they don't need someone to teach it to them, to enforce it on them, to force something that's not natural to the community on everyone. Anyone who steps out of line with that shared custom in a republic, they're going to quickly be chastised by their fellow citizens. Authority and order, they exist, but it's the community that does the majority of the enforcement. Again, light touch by the civil magistrate when necessary. And so you have this deep shared sense of identity and virtue, and that's what binds a republic together. However, there are some downsides to this, right? Plenty of upsides. We can think of all the upsides: more liberty, a more ordered society, the ability to have more expression. People do not feel this artificial weight of tyranny upon them. Lots of fantastic things that come from republics, but there have to be some downsides. All these forms come with downsides. Okay, there's republics are great. Maybe the way you want to live. Maybe that's because that's the way your people live. That's natural to you. But we have to make sure we understand there are downsides. And for republics, the downside, one of the major ones, is they're rare throughout history for a reason, because they have a specific limitation: scale. Most successful republics have been city states. They're small, contained societies capable of maintaining that virtue and identity. But once a republic starts to expand, it's naturally going to include people who don't share the nation's culture at all. In The Prince, Machiavelli actually warns that if a ruler does want to expand, he wants to conquer outside, he should only conquer nations, other peoples, that share basically the same religion or language or heritage that his nation does, because that'll allow the new people to assimilate with the previous population. If you bring in a bunch of people with a different language, a different religion, a totally different heritage, your compatibility is going to be very low. And Machiavelli says basically you're going to either have to you're going to have to colonize this place, you're going to have to just destroy it. Like when you conquer people who are so radically unlike you and you try to incorporate them into your society, it's going to be very difficult to govern as any type of ruler, but especially as a republic, because the republic has to incorporate those people into the body politic unless it has a very, very, very clear definition of who a citizen is and who's not. And even then, it usually ends up shifting in favor of more democracy and including more people, even the people that hated you. And we, of course, have this problem now. We just have mass democracy. If you're here for 5 years, you're probably going to end up becoming a citizen and get to vote, right? I mean, you don't have to, but that's probably what's going to happen. That's why we're constantly pushing for all kinds of amnesty and all these things, because if you leave people in the country long enough, some politician is going to want to offer them power or enfranchisement so that they can get the reciprocal support and power that comes with buying those votes, importing those votes in. So you have to be very careful as a republic when you expand, because if you're bringing in a bunch of people from different cultures, different languages, you're going to start breaking down the very social fabric that makes your republic possible. So attempting to rule all these people who are very different, it's just fraught with all kinds of difficulty. And the more different you are from the people who are coming into your country, the less likely they are to bear the yoke of your culture correctly, which is why there's this really angry attack on American culture because, well, people stopped feeling like they needed to assimilate to it. Instead, they kept telling Americans, you need to change, right? We've got these leaders in Minnesota yelling at American residents saying, well, no, you're an anti-Muslim bigot because you don't want your entire town to be taken over by Muslim calls to prayer. And we don't have to respect you, white guy. You don't belong in our society. And that's what they really mean. That's their society now. They conquered it and took it from you because you imported too many people who had a entirely different way of life. And guess what? They got to vote. So they started voting a bunch of people in that believe what they believe and look like they look and talk like they talk, because that's what people actually do. And so it's very dangerous for republics, especially with their mechanism of voting, especially if they've gone to a mass democracy where the citizenship means very little. It's extremely dangerous to bring in people of a different country, right? That just doesn't work very well. So this is a major problem with republics. They can be great, they can be amazing, but they do not scale well. They do not deal with expansion, bringing in a bunch of new people. It simply breaks down the system.